Hey, y'all, it's Way. So, I usually don't share a lot about my personal life and family life on here. Just don't. It's not really what I talk about unless it's like relevant. Um, so today I have a very special guest. Um, this is my brother Conrad. Say hey, Conrad. Hey. You were happy a second ago. You're getting out of it right now. Say hey. Say hey. Say hey. Looking at me like, what the hell are we doing? What are we doing? He said, get my good side. All right. So, Conrad's my little brother. He's actually a twin. I got two little brothers. He's 33 years old. He was born with severe cerebral palsy. He's never walked or talked or been able to care for himself. And I'm about 4 years older. Yeah, 4 years older than them. So this was something, I grew up raised in a Christian home. And this was something that didn't make a lot of sense to me in multiple ways, multiple ways. There's a lot, and within the Christian context, there's a lot that, is not answered. And, rightly so. Can't have all the answers. But, certain things about like certain people that just are born into situations and homes. And it's like, well, if there's an all loving, all caring God, why? How could this be? And I could go more and more into that, not just somebody in his condition and, born into like abusive families, but even like people that are, from that context. It's like, unless you believe in that, unless you believe this, and, you're damned. And, God being God and omniscient and all powerful and all knowing, the math just doesn't math. It's like, well, some people statistically would have more leanings or preferences towards one religion or another, or different beliefs and that. So it's like widely, uneven, unfair, one could say. And that just never added up. It just never added up for me. So that was something that was always there. And there's, I'm not going to get into that. Obviously, I know all the justifications, rationalizations, and things that are attempted to be going into to explain this away and, make it make sense in some way, shape, or form. And, I myself, I could use scripture and go into that, but that's really not what this is about. I was never really into it when I was younger, like reincarnation. I kind of vaguely remember hearing about that and coming across certain things, and just like didn't really add up, or didn't really didn't really give a whole lot of thought or anything into that one way, shape, or form. And it wasn't until later, after I had certain you'd say initiatory, revelatory experiences within my own awakening journey, within my own subjective experience of seeing these things for myself, having this revealed to me through relationship and connection with the Spirit, that I was able to see the truth into these things. Into reincarnation, and how that tied in, and really allowed for the fullness of that experience to be just that, more of the full experience. And even into that, originally there was a big limitation with understanding of reincarnation. And anybody with like a just Christian leaning into this subject, I would highly suggest believe it's Emmett Fox has a pamphlet, just I believe titled Reincarnation. It's not very long. And you can look into that and look that up for yourself. Um, but very, very limited, uh, immature understanding of reincarnation. Kind of like a tit for tat karmic thing. And that's it. And I've heard people talk about it, like, trying to explain, well, how do we have, starving kids in Africa and da 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 da, and then the attempts, like, well, you don't know, maybe these kids, maybe these people were, torture and like horrible things, how do kids go through all this stuff? And it's like, well, maybe these kids, maybe they were Nazis, in a past life and stuff like that. Yeah. And it's like, maybe. I'm not saying that that's never not the case, but that's a huge, huge limitation. What I've come to see and understand. Hey, getting a little bit more live over there now. So that's a huge limitation, huge limitation. That belief, not that it's not ever accurate or not the case, of course, in the grand scope of creation, the universe, the world, life, existence, and this domain of experiencing, sure, all things are possible, and potentialities, and the likelihood and probability that some of that is the case is, odds are good. It is the case sometimes. But again, that's not always the case. Again, there's a lot with this, and living with this through myself, and then still having my little brother and family going through this, because it is something that does have a weight for the whole family in that way. And this was something that never really, it's not that I tried to ever really tried to look into these things and go into that. It's just like, okay, some things you're more meant to accept and trust and have faith in than you are to know, to understand, to have that knowledge of in this limited level of experiencing. And I do believe in that. That doesn't mean that certain insights and understandings may not come along the way, which brings me to it was a few months back I had this experience, and I've likely shared on here some of my more mystical, kind of esoteric and arcane experiences that I have went through, seeing into other kind of levels of experiencing, dimensional presentations, other kind of etheric forms and beings and things of that nature. So that has been a part of my journey. It hasn't been a huge part. I'm not going to lie and say like there's never been something that's been like that's kind of like a sideshow, is my understanding. Like if that's meant to come up and you're meant to explore that, then it'll kind of evolve organically. But to like just full-fledgedly dive into that could be more of a distraction than anything. That's kind of the understanding that I've had. So that's kind of been my space with it. I trust and called when I'm called, and dive in when I feel called to dive in, and I stick to that. Try to stick to that. Now, sometimes I've got a little bit more, gravitated towards it than it's probably meant to be, out of levels of excitement, and I've been misled there. I have been bit. I remember one of my favorite teachers, Dr. David R. Hawkins, he used to say everybody that plays in the astral gets burnt, and I've got burnt. I've experienced that. There are lots of tricksters and beings that masquerade in that realm and domain. So that's nature of the beast. That's part of the game there. But anyhow, it was about a month or two back. I don't really recall how long. Conrad, he wasn't in the best shape, and he was struggling. Been in and out the hospital, and I just happened to be over here. He lives with my parents, and they don't live far. They live right down the road from me. And I was over here one afternoon, and just kind of went out back, and I went into meditation and prayer and communion, and I haven't really had any type of say awareness of these other realms or spirits or what entities that for a while, for months before this, and maybe months and months. just wasn't there, wasn't coming up, wasn't something I was really seeking or was active within my being at that time for a while. And then on this day, went up back and kind of had the intention of like some communion and attempting to commune with him, with his higher self, because I do believe and know that everybody has a soul essence, an over self, a higher self essence that is more connected to all these different lives and lifetimes and again, I don't want to go too into that. You can look into all that reincarnation stuff for yourself on your own time, but it is important to note that they're not like past and future and all that. All time is there's a non-linearity there, and it is kind of all simultaneous and occurring, but that's not super relevant. So all of a sudden his you'd say his true soul essence, higher self, showed up in my awareness, and it was a more revealed form of this being, my brother, and his truer nature, and there was like he's in like a robe of white and kind of glowing, and yeah, he looked similar but different, in that way, and which is not uncommon in understandings that I have and things. So, but it's not really super relevant. But anyhow, I was able to kind of glimpse and have some communion, and this type of communication is it's not always verbal. Like there can be like verbal communication, but then there's more of a direct kind of seeing and showing. I think certain terminology, maybe pictographs is one that's used. It's more of pictures, visual seeing and sight and showing and sharing in that way. So this was the case, and was kind of able to see more of like the connection into this life and the ties with family and things, because it's like, okay, in this life, he seems to be having to be provided for entirely. He seems to have, the whole family, like my mother and father specifically, have to be involved, very much so in his caretaking all the time and committed to that. And, he has to be provided for. And I was shown that he had lived, multiple lives of kind of, extravagance of being able to be in a caretaker position, in a caretaker position himself, in a way of providing for lots of people, being one that did the providing, did the caring, and had, where others weren't able, that they didn't need to worry about things for themselves, because he was the one that could provide, financially or, shelter and care, and was able to kind of overreach in that sense of giving care to, vast groups in a what could seem to be maybe an unbalanced way, right? And so anytime we get out of that balance, it's like you're going to have that opportunity to balance out. If that creates some distortion in these dynamics, then that's going to seem to have to be resolved in some way, shape, or form. And this was really what I was being shown through that, was like this life wasn't a curse in that sense. It was just an experience of being able to be provided for in that way. Now, does it seem to look like a curse and show up in that way? Yeah, it does. It's not, hey, bud, you up there? He's chilling. Yeah, I mean, he does seem to have to be provided for, and this does not seem to be a blessing in that way, shape, or form. But the amount of love and opportunity that this allows other beings to give and show, I mean, it's really cool. He's had lots of CNAs, nurses assistants over the years that come in and care for him, and I've got to see some very angelic incarnations. I didn't recognize them all at the time, and some after the fact. It wasn't until like the last 7 years that kind of had deeper insights after my initial kind of initiation into subtle spiritual awareness and stuff, that I was able to see further in these things. But he's definitely, there's been some beautiful interactions and beings that have been able to be around him and come in to assist and serve and help and share in that. So the level that this is affecting in the field, and the opportunities that are there for people to share in that love and service is huge. So there's actually, I think it was, I don't remember if she referenced somebody else's work. Maybe it was Edgar Cayce, but I remember it was Dolores Cannon. She was talking about like being shown like these types of incarnations with disabilities, to where, service would be provided. That's kind of like highly sought after on a certain level, because it allows for such opportunity within not just that being, but to assist with other beings and their kind of incarnational walk and lifetimes as well. So there's a lot that we don't understand here. There is a lot of information out there that gives that understanding. So anyhow, I just wanted to share some of that, because like this has been huge. This has really allowed me to come back and understand a full nature of like an actual loving and caring, forgiving, non-judgmental, non-condemning God. Because without, what I've found, without this kind of potential and understanding of reincarnation, you're always either going to have to come from a space of ignorance and ignoring a lot, or still subtly judging a lot, or just being confused by a lot. There's never really going to be that true resolution of that belief and faith that like the divine is completely and perfectly loving, that is always, everything actually is working for the good of that, right? There's always going to be some, dual, like, yeah, but this is Satan's world. Yeah, but he's got, control over this, and da 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 da. And it's like, it always puts some power up against God, some potential other than God against itself, which doesn't make sense. For, again, going back to an all-powerful, omniscient, omnipotent, God, that is always going to leave, some room for error and scratching of the head, which, you'll always have that to some degree or another in this realm, because again, this isn't a realm of complete knowledge in that way. That faith and trust is important, but these understandings allow for more of that faith and trust to be there, to be stood in and be stepped into, and to allow one to really, really see that, to really believe that and embody that for themselves, without this doubt and confusion that seems to want to root and take place. So I just wanted to share that. I love my brother. He's hey, chilling. We're probably gonna watch some anime. He likes watching anime. I've had him watch Dragon Ball Z recently. He likes that. But yeah, there's a lot we don't know. There's a lot we don't understand, but there is a lot we can know, we can understand, and that can assist with our faith and our capacity to truly stand in love, to truly stand in truth, and to not, allow these seeds of doubt and confusion to still be there within us. So that's why I wanted to share this. I wanted to share that, and yeah, thank y'all for tuning in. Conrad said peace out, and he said get out of here. All right, we're out. Peace and love y'all. Bye.